Hello you guys, and welcome to the second video in this series, Chess Coach Teaches Through, this book by Ernie Chernev, Logical Chess, Move by Move, every move explained. So let's take a look at the second game here. If you haven't seen the first one, go back and watch that. I made a video on that recently, but we're going to see the game Eugene Lyubarsky versus Viktor Ivanovich Sultanbayev. And these two guys are going at it all the way back in 1928. So the game starts with pawn to e4, and white plays pawn to e5. If you did watch that first video, you'll notice that this is actually the same opening. Now, in that last game, we saw the first player, Teachman, play queen to e7 to try and prevent pawn to d4. Here, in order to make pawn to d4 less powerful, black starts with bishop b6, which was also played in that game. And then after d4, black plays queen to e7. So we're back in that kind of little risky opening that black used to play quite a bit. This game was played all the way back in the early 1900s. So this was not deemed as risky back then. In the first game, after castles and knight to f6, we saw white capture this pawn on e5, and I criticized it because it helped black get very quick development. And we learned that if trade is not forced or fantastic, it's probably foolish. So that was not the best plan. Here, white plays another move, d5, which is very understandable, and it looks very strong. It's perfectly fine for white, but it has a lot of drawbacks. And if you are playing on the black side, you really need to know these. Otherwise, you're going to feel like you're getting crushed. Black just gained space, attacked your knight, and all of a sudden you no longer have the pressure on that d4 pawn. This is going the wrong way very fast. But there are big problems with the move pawn to d5. And those come in three different forms. First, we see that the bishop is now blocked. So the fact that the pawn is in gaining space is actually taking away space for some of the other pieces. And then we also see that this bishop on b6 is significantly better. The bishop is now open, so white's bishop has gotten a lot worse, and the black bishop is much better. Thirdly, and finally, this is yet another pawn push, a fourth pawn push in the game, and these pieces on the queen side are begging to be developed. In the opening, if you don't know the exact theoretical move, remember, you're supposed to just develop a new piece. That's the rule. Instead here, white plays d5, and this comes with its own baggage. Black backs up to b8. Don't go to knight a5, in which case, after bishop to b2, your knight, bishop to e2, your knight is marooned on the side of the board. It will not be able to go here, or here, or here, or here, and you will lose your horse on the next turn. So instead, go knight b8, which, again, it feels like we're getting crushed. Again, this is kind of a risky opening for black, so sure, we are expecting not to get the best position out of the opening, but at the same time, we have some really strong positives that I'm about to show you. Let's keep going. So after the move knight b8, we see bishop to d3, just defending that e4 pawn. Let's not forget that black might actually want to capture this pawn very soon. The bishop backed up to d3. Black played pawn to d6, and here pawn to h3 was played. And this is a big mistake from white. The computer is not going to ever say that this is a horrible blunder, because it's not, but this is a move that, just like in the first game that we saw, when we learned about the pins with the bishop on the diagonal of the king, like we have in this game, and when the pawn pushes to h3, you get you get some very open kingside squares. Like, for instance, this one is no longer guarded at all because the pawn is pinned by the bishop to the king. So this is a very risky move. And again, where is white's piece development? Let's not be afraid of our opponent if they're not developing their pieces. Here, the game continues with pawn to h6, and whoa, I just criticized white playing pawn to h3. The move pawn to h6 is significantly better. Why is that? Well, there's two reasons. The first is that black has yet to castle, and so this pawn push is going to be aimed at potentially a kingside attack. And the black king is safe and can go queenside, whereas the white king is clearly on the king side, and there's no way you're going to try and attack on that side of the board. The second reason why pawn to h6 is quite good is because this position is very closed, and with our space disadvantage, we might not want to lose one of our only good pieces, which is going to be the knight on f6. So we are going to prevent that bishop from coming to g5 to pin our knight to the queen. So here, queen e2, and then we see the best move of the game. This one is not the game-winning move. It's not the one that's the most flashy. It's one you can easily forget. But the reason this is so strong is because it starts black on the right plan. Black noticed what he was supposed to do, and he went with it. If it's black to play here, what would you do? So the answer is we should play g5. And as I mentioned before, black's king is not yet castled. So there's no risk really in pushing this pawn. Except, didn't I just say that the queenside pieces need to be developed and pushing a bunch of pawns is bad? What gives? Well, that's because we have a very specific situation of closed center with a angle of attack towards the king side. Our pawn structure is aiming towards the white king. With a closed center and pawns aiming at the white king, that tells us that we should attack on the king side. White should definitely not be doing this because his pawns are more aiming towards the queen side, and he actually has a space advantage on that side. So white should not be playing h3 and instead should be attacking on the queen side with his queen side pieces, and black should be attacking on the king side. So keep that in mind. When you have a closed center where your king safety is not quite as important, and when you have pawns aiming at the king side, attack on the king side. We don't have enough pieces to get an attack going right away. Only our knight and our queen, maybe our bishop. But with the pawns coming to the attack, we're going to have a much better chance of actually breaking through. So g5 is the right move, attacking with the pawns and then eventually the pieces. After knight to h2, trying to prevent black's g4, black steamed forward anyway with the beautiful pawn g4. This is not really even a pawn sacrifice. After h takes g4, black simply played rook to g8, preparing to take that pawn right back. And of course, don't forget this pawn cannot go to f3 because it is pinned. So since this pawn is pretty much gone, white tried to capture a second pawn with bishop takes h6. And this is the actual game-losing move. There should be no reason ever when you're ahead material to take even more material, opening up a whole open file to your king side. I told you in the last video that if your opponent makes a gambit, you should accept it, but you shouldn't try to keep that material. Instead, you should just play normal good moves, develop, and try to catch back up. And here, white plays a cardinal sin. He takes the pawn that opens up a file, and now he is completely lost, as you can see by the evaluation bar. Knight takes g4, wins back the pawn on g4, defended by the rook and bishop. The bishop dropped back to e3, and here black played knight takes h2, removing a kingside defender. You might have said, I love this as an attacker. It's true, it's a great attacker, but what's more important is to get rid of a defender. Trading attackers for defenders is very important when you're attacking. So knight takes h2, we do that. And then after the king takes back, the only move, the queen slides in, queen h4, king g8, king g1. And here, just an absolutely wonderful move. The only way to force checkmate here, a lot of moves are winning. You can try rook to h8, but that might fail because the king will run away. The pawn will push up to f3, and then the king will escape. You could just develop a piece and have a perfectly fine position, but here, what is the winning move? Pause if you would like a second chance at this, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you the correct move is queen h3, and it was the one played in the game. This, utilizing the pin on the g file, threatens mate with queen takes g2, or even rook takes g2. The responses are limited. Here, the move pawn g3 was played. There's really nothing else. If you try queen to f3, let's not forget that pawn is still pinned by the rook. There goes the queen, and mate's coming on the next turn. So here it goes pawn g3. But now that the g pawn is pushed, big difference, we can play rook to h8. And now white does play pawn to f3, trying to prepare to escape. But then in this position, and by the way, this also prevents queen to h2 checkmate. Queen to h1, the king can still escape. So what's our plan here? Well, here white resigned after bishop captures on e3. If the rook blocks, then queen to h1 is mate on the board. And if the queen blocks, queen to h2 is mate right away. If the queen captures on e3, queen to h2 is checkmate the simple and old-fashioned way. All right, that's going to be it for us today. Hope you enjoyed this video. And if you do, please like the video and subscribe and let me know so that I can continue making more of these videos in the future. Have a great day. Bye.